Hello everyone, this is Alex Ipatov and welcome to the series on Rook Endgames. In the first video, I'm going to show the most well-known position in Rook Endgames, the so-called Philidor position. The famous French chess player was the first to demonstrate as early as the 18th century the correct method of defense. The Philidor position is on your screens. It's black to move and make a draw. But before I show you the right way to go for black, let's ask ourselves, what does white want? What would white do if it were white to play here? If it were white to play, white would want to play king f6 with the idea rook a8 check and then e6 check. White's plan is pretty simple, to kick the black's king away from e8 and promote the e-pawn into a queen. So now we know what white wants. White wants to play king f6. How can we prevent this? Our king is cut off on the 8th rank, so we can't play king e7 or f7 because those squares are controlled by the white's rook on a7. We may check on f1, rook f1 check, but then after king e6 there are no more checks, while white's next move is pretty easy, it's rook a8 checkmate. So rook f1 isn't the best move to go. The right move that was discovered by Philidor more than 200 years ago is rook b6. The idea of this move is quite straightforward, to take f6 and e6 squares under control. The defensive method is easy and very simple. Just keep the rook on the 6th rank and do not let the white king cross it. If white waits here, let's say rook g7, black waits as well, rook a6. Rook g6 does not help because then black can transpose into drawish pawn endgame, rook takes g6, king takes g6 and king e7. And this is an easy draw thanks to their position. e6, king e7, king e5, king e8, important move, king f6, king f8, and that's a draw. So rook g6 is not a way to go for white. So let's see what happens if white waits as well, rook h7. Black waits as well, rook b6. So how to improve this position for white? We can't play king e6 and we can't play king f6. What to do? And we cannot exchange rooks in the 6th rank because then it's a drawish pawn endgame. Let's try to push our e-pawn. Now we threaten to play king f6 followed by rook h8 checkmate. But after white pushes his pawn to the 6th rank, black's plan is to start checking from behind. Black plays rook b1 and starts checking no matter what. If king f6 and rook f1 check, and we see that the white king doesn't have the e6 square in his disposal. So that was the idea of waiting on the 6th rank. First white to play e6 and only then to start checking from behind. So as we see, the white king cannot hide from checks. King e5, rook e1 check, king d6, rook d1 check, and so on. It's a draw. So let's take a look again at the starting position. What can white do? We cannot exchange rooks in the 6th rank because it's a drawish pawn endgame. And if we push the pawn to e6, then black simply plays rook b1 and starts checking from behind. And the white king does not have the important e6 square in his disposal to hide from the checks. So this is the most well-known position in Rook Endgames, the Philidor position. If you are black and white has an extra pawn in the 5th rank, keep your rook on the 6th rank, and whenever your opponent pushes his pawn to e6, go to the 1st rank and start checking the white king from behind. If you're white and you're pawn down, let's say black has e4 pawn and king on f4, and we have our white king on e1, then keep the rook on the 3rd rank, in case if we are white and we are pawn down. Alright, now let's take a look at the same position with white to move. And Philidor thought that it's lost if white manages to play king f6. In fact, it's still a draw, as it was proved after Philidor's death. So, after white plays king f6, it starts to look dangerous for black, because now the threat is rook a8 check, followed by e6 check, and white will eventually promote the queen. So what to do? If rook b6 check, now it's not that strong, because white can play e6 and black does not have time to play rook b1 and rook f1. We play chess and each side usually has one move at a time. So it's lost now, because if rook b1, then simply rook e8, and it's checkmate in 1. So what to do? Rook b6 is not the way to go. If rook f1, then once again king e6. In this position, the white king does have e6 square in his disposal. Now the threat is rook e8, checkmate. So rook f1 is not the way either. So what to do? Are we lost? No. Black has rook e1 here. The idea of this move is to take e6 square under control. This we can see in this simple line. Rook e8 check, king d7, and the rook takes e6 square under control. White cannot play e6 check because simply rook takes e6. And if white plays rook a7 check again, then king e8. If white pushes the pawn to e6, then black starts checking, as we already saw in the previous example. And the white king cannot hide from checks because the e6 square is not at his disposal, and so on. But still, white can try to put some problems in front of black. So rook e1, king e6, threatening mate in 1, rook e8 checkmate. What can black do here? Black has two moves, king d8 or king f8. In fact, both moves lead to a draw, but king f8 is a more precise move because in these positions, black should stay on the short side and the rook belongs to the long side. I'm going to show more about this in the third video. So king f8, as I already said, is more precise than king d8 because king goes to the short side and the rook goes to the long side. Rook a8 check, king g7, and king d6, threatening to play e6. If white manages to play e6, it's all lost for black. So what can we do? Simply king f7, and white cannot make any progress because rook on e1 covers the e6 square. If white checks, rook a7 check, then we go to the initial square to e8. Once again, if white plays e6, then we start checking. This is the first method that we saw in our first example. And if white checks, then we go to f7. And now we threaten to play rook d1 check. So white has to check again, king e8, king e6. And as I had already said, both moves lead to a draw, but king f8 is more precise. So what did we learn from this video? We learned that this position is a draw no matter who moves, white or black. Of course, it's easier to make a draw if it's black to move. Then we simply play rook b6, the first method that Philidor discovered. But it's also a draw if it's white to move here. So if white plays king f6, we play rook e1 and we take the e6 square under control. White cannot push e6 because then black starts to check from behind. Alright, thank you for watching the video. It was Alex Ipatov. In the second video, we're going to take a look at the Lucena position.